Okay. Good morning. Good morning, viewers. Good morning, learners from wherever you're getting this particular lesson from. Within the confines of your living rooms at home, as you are much aware, COVID-19 has relegated us back to the new normal, in which things have to be done differently. We reckon that this has never been the existence in our normal life, but as we do say, everything that is inevitable, the inevitability of life, we must cope and just adapt and be resilient and learn how to live with COVID-19. So viewers, students by extension, we will be doing this periodically to make sure that our lessons are going on and that you are getting this from the comfort of your homes. So this is quite interactive. We will be looking at the set books, the compulsory ones, so that we keep abreast with what is supposed to be done, even when you are back at school. And for that matter, I want this to be quite engaging, quite interactive, where you think you should have a question that is to be answered. Kindly use the platforms that are streaming below your screen there, so that we also get a feel, because I think that teaching and learning environment takes place effectively where there is an engagement and reflection. So a lot of it will actually be on reflection. A lot of it will be on critical thinking. These are some of the elements, as we shall be looking at in our lesson, the elements that you need to be cognizant of. So we will start. Obviously, our texts are quite known by you, and this lesson is tailor-made for the Form 3s and the final class, the Form 4s, who fully understand the compulsory texts, plus even the optional texts that have been read. But for the purpose of this lesson, I will dwell on textual examples of the Blossoms of the Savannah, written by Henry Ole Kulet. And number 2, the Adol's House. This one is a play written by Henrik Ibsen. The other time I was here, I was looking at these two in terms of content, or what we call textual information of the compulsory text that the 844 syllabus puts emphasis on. And I remember telling you why I think the KICD, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, had to choose a text between these two compulsory texts, and that has been a trend all the time. The texts are selected. You realize that, one, we have a compulsory text that is within our immediate environment, or what we call local environment. And the second text, compulsory text, so this is, they keep on interchanging. If we do not have a play serving our local environment or immediate environment, we will have a novel for that matter. And you see there is quite an interchange of those two genres, either the novel or the play. But what I wanted to reinforce, and I have already said it here, is that these two compulsory texts are selected with that criteria in mind, that we have one of the texts that is from our immediate environment. When I talk of immediate environment or context, I actually mean the Kenya, and by extension the immediate environment that Kenya forms, and you'll see that that is mostly East Africa. So my advice to all the Kenyan learners, and especially the candidates sitting paper 3 literature, is to appreciate your own context, first of all, your local context. That is very key for anybody who will actually want to say that he or she is literally aware of what he's doing with whichever text. So the requirement of the local text is actually to appreciate your own knowledge before you can appreciate other people's knowledge or other people's context. This, from a layman point of view, is like charity beginning at home. It's like learning from the known before you move to the unknown. I remember when I was in high school, I sat, actually our text was the novel written by Margaret Ogola, The River and the Source. And in that particular novel, she quotes a very powerful saying that for how can you know where you're going unless you know where you're coming from? And I think that informs the very reason as to why, in their greatest wisdom, the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development will first of all give you a text that is within your home environment. And why are they doing that? I've just talked about the question of context here. And context is a very broad term here. In literature, when you talk of context, a local context, before you move into any other context, you are looking at context in terms of cultural perspectives, culture. You are looking at context in terms of values. You are looking at your own context in terms of things such as the people, the characters, characters, in brackets, people, how you interact. We have got environment, environment. We have got, and you see that the word culture will actually be a summation of everything here. Because values will be embedded in culture. Characters, the traits, the behavior of people, how they behave, how they interact with one another is a reflection of culture. So, in a nutshell, what we are saying is that for us to appreciate paper 3, and by extension even paper 2, we must be cognizant of our own culture first of all. What happens within our own cultural contexts? The Kenya, the East Africa, and by and large, even the African culture. Once we appreciate that, we shall now go to the second selection of the compulsory text, which is a must. It has to come from the rest of the continent. And you realize that Africa has its own neighbors, so a book, second book, can either come from Europe, it can come from America, it can come from the Scandinavian, or any other jurisdiction that has now a slight departure of what the African culture is all about. So it has been my advice to learners and extension, by extension, the literature teachers, to expose the learners to what I refer to as the local context. If we know what is our culture, for instance, if you met a person on the way and he asks you, what is your culture? What is your culture? Will that Form 4 student listening to me tell me 1 or 2 or 3 things about what is his or her own culture? And I think that is a very good point of interaction. If you met a person and he asks you a simple question, because I think that is very simple, because it is a living question. What is your culture? What entails your culture? So can you list down 3 things that will be so synonymous or characteristic of you? I need that awareness because literature surrounds in all these perspectives. So we will realize that in these 2 compulsory books, we have got what we call a key concept. The key concept, why that book is written. And you realize that it simply goes back to our cultural orientation. If you did ask yourself one fundamental question, why do you think Henry Olekulet wrote The Blossoms of the Savannah? You'll be coming here. What is the key concept? The key concept that actually Henry Olekulet sat down, examined his Kenyan and by extension the Ma cultural practices, and sat down and said, I need to write a book that is so provoking, that is going to look at the Ma culture and by extension the Kenyan culture and by extension the African culture, and look at what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and look at the departure and create a conflict out of it. Then you are the good literary student. And this lesson has actually been just devoted to looking at the best way in which we can appreciate our compulsory text. Because if we cannot realize this, then we read this text in isolation. I've always been telling my students, you cannot read a text. If you are reading a text in isolation, then you better read for enjoyment. You are not reading it for the purpose of preparing for the examination. Now, having looked at that, and I've given you a very good activity, you are going to list me 3 things that you think is characteristic of your culture. I know most of you, I'm speaking to the students drawn from the 47 counties of this great republic, and even some other foreign students or even international students who are in the country and they are enjoying the local curriculum. I'm not isolating you. If you are foreign students, I know there are so many South Sudanese students here who are enjoying our local system. You can also put forth your culture. I know there are some South African students who live and are studying here. You can also share with me some of your cultural perspectives, because from there, from these perspectives, that is when now we shall see why is it that the second compulsory text must now be outside of our jurisdiction. And on that note, I have said that the second book now, or text, is actually a play written by Henrik Ibsen. So this is actually a text that is not within our environment. It's more of a Scandinavian play written in the Victorian times. And that basically now tells you as a student to go beyond your local environment. Sometimes I like teaching or making my explanation using very contemporary explanation. It is actually thinking globally, but acting locally. If you can take that expression, then you'll know why the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development will bring a book all the way from Europe to your context so that you as a student can appreciate that. I was here last time and said that by reading good books, you actually journey around the globe. Some of you don't have visas, you don't have travel documents outside of this country. You should not actually say, sympathize with yourself and say you are just localized within or cocooned within a local context. You can be international by reading books. You don't have to travel to Europe or to you can actually see, and when I say this, I appreciate good writers who bring a global context to a very local environment. And that comes with a very good reading, very good writing, and all that. Somebody can describe that Downing Street in the UK so well that you can actually appreciate it. I remember when I was in high school, I actually read very extensively the wheat prairies of Canada in geography, and I could actually describe the prairies, the wheat growing prairies in Canada so well. So you don't have to complain and say that since I've never been to South Africa, I've never been to Jamaica, how can I know the culture of the Jamaicans? How can I appreciate the culture of the Igbo people of West Nigeria, for instance? You don't have to take a plane to Nigeria for you to appreciate the Igbo people of that particular region. You just need to get a book, sit down, like for instance, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and go through the pages, look at the way he describes the people, look at the cultural practices of the people, look at their aspirations, and actually, so in a nutshell, I'm saying you will be thinking globally, but you'll be bringing your global experiences and practices to the local environment. And this goes a long way. It informs us why we go to school sometimes. There has been a lot of misconceptions and fallacies about when you ask students, why do you go to school? And they give you totally wrong answers to that. If you ask a student and he tells you that he goes to school to get a white-collar job, that student is better off going back home and burning the books and remaining illiterate. Because that's not the very reason as to why we go to school. We go to school to provide solutions to our local challenges. And these solutions are not employment. If you look at the hierarchy, employment should not be, white-collar employment should not be part of the reasons as to why we go to school to gain knowledge, skills, attitudes, and all that. So you will be bringing global context and how people do. And we are saying that because we know very well that culture is very dynamic. Culture is very dynamic. Culture is very diverse, very diverse. The local context will have given you a certain perspective. For instance, let me take, because I'm going to use our text to draw a lot of examples here. Your perceptions, your mindset about Blossoms of the Savannah as a novel, which has FGM as a very key concept, will be so different from maybe somebody from Taiwan or somebody from even Dar es Salaam, Tanzania here. The way you perceive female genital mutilation will not be exactly the same as somebody who is in Canada or is in Oxford, UK. And so, in literature, we are provided with a platform or an avenue where we now try to merge or marry and integrate our local thinking, our local cultural perspectives vis-a-vis the global culture. And you'll realize that globally, we are now fusing, and we're not saying that, and this is where I come out very strongly to say that there is no culture, whether local or global, that should be superior or inferior to each other. The very reason as to why those local people are practicing their culture as they do should not be negated. What we are simply doing here is looking at the global perspectives vis-a-vis our local perspectives and trying to strike what I will maybe describe as an equilibrium. So that now, as scholars of literature, we come out of that text with a fully understanding, not only of our own local examples, but also on the global stage, looking at the related concepts globally. Do you think if I went to Jamaica, for instance, and I talked about this, will it resonate with the Jamaicans? Or I'm just going to take local examples only. Here, if you remain at this level only, then you become very myopic. You become very limited in your understanding of what literature is all about. So, my students, it is very important as we read these texts. First of all, and now that brings me into our activity 2. Activity 2 has A and B. You can draw a table. A, I want you to look at your local cultural practices. Yeah, we are using both the blossoms as well as adults. Go through that, try to contextualize in your own local environment. Why do which items, if we picked from Henry Olekulet's Blossoms of the Savannah, as well as Adol's House, they will form our local, or by extension, our Kenyan culture. And which one do you think, if we picked here, they will be like global? They are going to be accepted globally. So also pick examples here. If you can come up with 3 on each side, I'll be very glad to get your feedback on that. Now, the very reason as to why I have said that is because KCSE is very big on values. Is very big on values. And I started by saying that values are going to emanate from our cultural perspectives, not only within our local perspective, but also global perspectives. So these values are very, very important. I wish to tell you that as you read and analyze these 2 texts, it is important to know that values, I should also group them into 2. We have got what we call positive values and, let me say, the negative values. Yeah? In most cases, within the literal perspective, positive values are carried by the protagonists in our books. Protagonists. And these are good, well-intentioned characters who carry now the message of the writer to the very full conclusion. And you can actually say that I have read the book when you have gone through the 3 stages of the book. The initiation part of it, where the story is building up, to the climax, where there is the creation of the conflict, all the way to the crescendo, and to the very end, which is the resolution. And you ask yourself whether it is a tragedy or it's a comedy. That is when you can say that I have read The Blossoms of the Savannah and I know it. I have read Adol's House and I know it. Plus, after this, we will be talking about now the local contextualizing. Even if we are journeying all the way to Europe and looking at Nora and look at Krogstad and look at Lind and look at all the characters within the Scandinavian society, what is it that we can bring home and say, supposing you are contextualizing Adol's House in your local environment, what is it that you're going to pick from Adol's House and say, this is relevant? And that is very, very key, students, because that is what is going to inform you and the level or percentage of understanding or comprehension of that particular book. You are not going to say, I understand Adol's House, if you cannot bring the experiences of Adol's House, the key concepts and the related concepts of Adol's House into your own local perspective and say, I think, according to me, Adol's House is talking about this in my own environment. If I'm picking, for instance, something like gender roles, gender roles. And I'm looking at my Kenyan situation. I'm going to ask myself, what do you think are the roles played by men vis-a-vis women? I will ask myself very difficult questions because these questions are going to help me in reflection. In my own perspective, should women be financially emancipated? Should women actually have financial control, or must just a woman, by virtue of getting married to a man, be like a doll? All of us know what a doll is. And sometimes I do say that Henrik Ibsen is just a wizard in this. Look at even the careful selection of his words in terms of a doll. And I think that is where a lot of women, both locally and globally, have a big problem with the play. They think that Henrik Ibsen, by virtue of demeaning them to mere dolls in their households, is reason enough to bring the agitation. But you see, that is what Henrik Ibsen wanted, to provoke. You cannot write or read if there's no provocation. Some of the books, you just get hold of a book, go through the first page, second page, and you are so pissed off, you throw it away. But these are some of the books that actually can be so engaging, and they put you. So in terms of positive and negative values, very, very important. And I'm building that from, first of all, appreciating culture, appreciating local concepts, local environment, international environment. So I want you, again, during your time, to look at all the characters in the two texts that carried positive values. And I know you are at home. I presume that you have not forgotten the textual information. We don't have the luxury of time to start reading the book from chapter 1 to the 19th chapter, or act 1 to the 3rd act. That is upon you, that I started in the introduction by saying that we must learn how to navigate through the new normal. If you are just seated, the other day there was a joke online on how students will behave when they reopen schools in January next year. Some might lift the characters in Swahili text and put them in the English text. It's going to happen. Some of you will come back with what I call pseudo minds. You have totally forgotten everything. That is going to be tragic. And that's why I always appreciate KU, Kenyatta University, very well. By virtue of being my alma mater, I've said this time and again, my intellectual citadel was actually nurtured here. And it's always good to have this platform as a university, giving back to your society, where students are actually, and I know you have a lot of programming, but you can see that you have devoted quite substantive time within your airwave to make sure that the students are connected to what they're supposed to remind themselves of. The negative values are propagated by the villains. The villains are the evil characters within the text. So I also want you to list down, both in the two genres, the play and the novel, all the villains that actually propagated the evil or negative values. Now, the point I wanted to drive here or explain here vividly is that positive characters must be rewarded, while negative values must be punished. That has to go without actually saying. If you did write even an imaginative story in this particular paper 3, the essay, either the essay or even your own composition based on imagination and creativity, you must bring out this. One thing I have always told students, because I have been an examiner with the Kenya National Examination Council in this particular paper, is that the moment you leave your essay or your composition without either rewarding the positive values or punishing the negative values, you risk being penalized -4 marks out of your very good hard-earned marks. And you see, this is very simple. This rubric is very simple for a student to capture. But most of them, I don't know whether it's by society that we have allowed you to operate. Many are the stories that we meet while marking your compositions, and a young lady or a young man has written a very good composition, language, very superb, stylistics, very superb. In terms of the plot development, very good, but he has missed out on punishing the evil or rewarding the what? The positive attributes in that particular story. And on that note, you can realize that this student will just risk losing the 4 marks, just like that. The other day, I was here, and this is the second example I'm giving of our own local, very prolific writer. I know you have read most of his books, called John Kiriamiti. John Kiriamiti. John Kiriamiti, in his own right, he's a very powerful writer. I have read his 2 books, the sequel to My Life in Crime, and which was Son of Fate. Very 2 powerful books. I know why it captivates the young people or the young generation of this particular society. But then, when John Kiriamiti visited the school where I teach, a Form 2 student asked John Kiriamiti, "John, your books are very good, but where do I get a moral lesson or value as a Form 2 student?" And I'm telling you, up to now, the old writer with a lot of experience in writing, and I think also experience in life, was unable to provide a solution to that particular Form 2 student. That is the kind of question we should also be asking. So you cannot write a story to me and say that you actually, it was your good day, it was luck, it was something so unprecedented that you saw maybe an old woman drop 1 million shillings from her way, from the bank, and you actually picked the luggage and took the 1 million shillings to your mom, and your mom said, "Hooray, this is so good of you." And you spent that money, you bought things that you lacked as a family, and you grew from poverty, abject poverty, to instant riches. That is wrong. It is totally wrong, because the education system that we teach and even the literary concepts that we want to inculcate into you must bring out the values. So, in all of these 2 books, I'm telling you, from chapter 1 to the last chapter, you realize that evil characters must be punished. Good characters must be rewarded. Some people, and that is on deconstruction and trying to bring a lot of sense in it, might ask a very fundamental question. Why do you think Nora then walks away? Walks away at the end of the play, leaving the children just unattended? Why do you think Nora could not allow herself to have a discourse or some kind of communication with the husband, Torvald, so that the issues and the differences they have is resolved amicably? And I always say that literature is actually an awakening experience. So there are some who will argue that Nora was actually an evil character. Others will say no. As a woman, having gone through the experiences, the very rough terrain in her marital life, that was a good decision for her to leave the marriage and just walk away. so that maybe Torvald will learn that lesson and say, women need better treatment. So those are the questions when you look at the values. If you come to the novel, for instance, and you are looking at our powerful character, such as so in that case, you look at the characters and the values that they are propagating. For example, in the novel, look at a character such as Emma Kerere. Emma Kerere. Emma Kerere is a very different type of character in this particular novel. She's so different from the society. We started by looking at local concepts, what defines us locally, vis-a-vis what is it that will be internationally or globally accepted. So you can see that the conflict now that comes out is a creation of Emma Kerere. Yeah? But Emma Kerere is behaving the way she's behaving so as to act as a role model to the girls, that is Resian, and the sister, so that it is a departure from what is the society deems as correct. And that brings us back to our FGM and early marriages and early marriage. So that is what the two girls are fighting so vehemently in this particular society. And you can see that Emma Kerere is now actually hated by almost everybody. In fact, she is being referred to as the wasp. The wasp. And she is so hated to a point whereby she must also fight. And without it, the two girls, actually, the dreams of joining Egerton University and pursuing veterinary science would not have been achieved if Emma Kerere was not playing her role. Yeah? So, in trying to get what the texts are talking about, look at the characters that are propagating positive values vis-a-vis the characters that are propagating negative values. And see, ask yourself another question. Are they rewarded and punished or not? Look at the end of the novel, for instance, when Oloisdori, our evil character in the novel, Oloisdori, very, very evil, the villain, actually I think the top villain in that particular novel. When Oloisdori is beaten by Emma Kerere's men, and his cars or the motorcade is actually burned and reduced to ashes. That is what we are talking about. As a reader who has been holding that suspense from chapter to chapter, when you read the last chapter, actually, and it provides with you that literary catharsis, that solution, and you breathe a sigh of relief and say, hooray, Emma Kerere has won, Oloisdori has lost terribly. That is what writing is all about. Yeah? So, in that, Henry Olekulet comes out as a very powerful writer because he has provided solution to the problem that the local community was facing. And what was the problem that the local community was facing? FGM, early marriages, mistreatment to women, and generally a feministic approach to life, where now women also get positive, something to smile about. And when you talk about feminism, it has been a topic that has been so controversial over a period of time. So I don't know, Bonnie, do we have any feedback from the students? I think this is the time we can get some feedback before we wrap it up in the next segment. Sorry? Yeah. I think this is a good timing to actually now interact with the student and see what they are asking. On my WhatsApp, hi, this is Kim from Meru, who is actually listening and saying that these are very good lessons. They are really helping me a lot to catch up, even when I'm at home. He's asking a question, what does culture entail? I think, Kim, that will be so technical of you because it's a question that I asked you. You cannot return the same question to me. I wanted you to do some research about it. And you as being Meru. And sometimes I look at our great country having 42 tribes. I don't know, 43. The Makonde joined recently. As a Meru person, what is it that you'll say that this constitutes the Meru culture? So Kim, before the end of this lesson, I want you to give me that feedback. Secondly, we have, hello, I am Grace from Syokimau, Katani. Actually, Grace goes to Katani DEB Secondary School. Please repeat the question, the explanation on the key concepts. The key concepts. That's a very good student who is actually listening, and it's good that we actually flash back on that. I said that in analyzing the text, we first of all appreciate what is the overriding, and the key concept is very easy to understand. You simply ask yourself, why did Henry Olekulet write his book? What is it that will cut across the board? Before now you go to the related concepts. The related concept will be now other themes, minor themes that complement the, in a very layman approach, I'll say it's like the subject matter of that particular book or text. So in that case, we will ask ourselves, why do you think The Blossoms of the Savannah was written? Blossoms of the Savannah. And we will actually look at the overriding reasoning behind that. Why do you think Henry Olekulet just sat down and said that I must write The Blossoms? The text itself, the title itself actually will try to help you understand that. To blossom is to come to fruition. It is to flourish, to achieve something. So in that case, the reason why Henry Olekulet did write this novel, in my perspective, is actually for women empowerment. It's more of feminism. It is a journey to empower women, women empowerment. And now you will now ask yourself, how does he achieve to empower women? It takes place in so many ways. And part of it, we started by looking at the cultural perspective. That if you shun retrogressed cultural practice, shun all the retrogressed cultural practices such as FGM, such as early marriages, and even domestic violence, you are going to empower women. That if you stop FGM, if you stop circumcising women, though again it is highly controversial, because when you read in between the lines of the text, you realize that the same women are the ones who started FGM. You have all read the story of Olarinkoi, Olarinkoi and the Ilarinkoni warriors, and how women wanted to circumvent themselves by having an escape strategy on forced mutilation by the evil Ilarinkoni warriors. But the question that is being raised is, now that these women practices, the warriors are long gone, why are they still practicing that? Again, he achieves this by that when you empower women through education, and that's why you see Resian and the sister Tayo coming out very well to bring in the concept of education here. So that is a very powerful question that you have asked. When you look at the key concept, you are looking at what informed the writer to come up with the book. And for those who are even aspiring to be writers, you cannot just start writing a book if you do not have a key concept. I want to write a book that will touch about this. This key concept must be your driving engine to now come up with a book. Otherwise, what will be the very logic behind writing of that book? If you look at Adolf's house, again here I will look at the key concepts, the overriding concept in the Blossoms, as also women, women empowerment. Women empowerment. And that's why I said, as a teacher, from the very onset of these two books, that this is where KICD flopped a little bit. You cannot pick a novel talking about emancipation of women. You're also picking a play also talking about emancipation of women. We have so many key concepts there. So what are the related concepts in the play that now tries to solidify Henrik Ibsen's idea of empowering women? And you can see that if you financially empower women, finances, the Nora, just like the husband, must also be financially empowered. If you look at demeaning names, demeaning names, that women must not be referred to as dolls. We must not use women in our society as objects of second fiddle. If you look at how Torvald refers to his wife, actually she's referred to as a doll, she's referred to as a skylark, she's referred to as my little squirrel. All these are demeaning names that do not really add value to the place of a woman in the society. That if you look at the play very well and see that self-sacrifice, that a woman actually can play a very crucial role, like that of sacrificing herself to allow or to live other person's life. And again, we see Nora actually doing what? Sacrificing a lot, going outside of her way to take a loan secretly, even to an extent of forging the father's signature, just to make sure that Torvald has been taken to Italy on a vacation, so that he could actually get cured from his particular sickness, the contraption of the spine. So that is a very good question. I hope I have answered that quite elaborately. That's a very good literature student, and she is called, she's called what? They are coming in fast and furious. That was Grace from Syokimau. That is a very good question. What if I was asked to describe the theme of corruption? Which particular compulsory book? Corruption. In the two books, I don't think, anyway, you know, describing a theme is out of context. So you could actually look at the illustrations. I've always reminded my students that when you identify something like either a theme, or a character, or a stylistic, that is just identification. But it's now upon you to go into the text and illustrate. And I always say that in literature, there is no absolute correctness. There's no custodian of absolute truth in literature. It's about your defense. How are you going to say that there's a theme of corruption in the adults? There is a theme of corruption in the what? In the Blossoms of the Savannah. That is upon you to go through and come up with textual illustration that's going to convince the examiner, and you are going to be awarded the marks on that. So you did not specify which text. Maybe if you can build up on your question so that it becomes quite understandable. Hello, I am Agri. What are the conflicts happening? And explain kindly. Which book again? You know, some of you are putting questions that are not really. I did say the conflicts in the story, in the two books, and I say that the conflict builds up on the plot. You cannot talk of a plot rising to the crescendo, the climax, if the conflicts are not coming out. And there are so many. I have told you in the past that when you you want to understand conflicts or to understand the book very well, move away from what we call the plot analysis. Plot analysis is where you just read the book but for the sake of reading from chapter 1, chapter 2. You are reading the sequel. It's like you are watching a soap opera. That is not a very good way of analyzing. You will not understand the conflicts in that particular story. But the best way, now that you are at home, you can take your pen and paper and come up with what we call the episodes. In fact, a very good student now, Form 3 and Form 4, if you are asked how many episodes are in the Blossoms of the Savannah and how many episodes are in Adol's House, you should comfortably say and list them down. An episode is almost a complete actionable unit. Supposing you are watching some role play here or some drama here, from that movement to one event that ushers in another event, that's what I'm referring to as an episode. So in the Blossoms, for example, in Blossoms, you might start by relocation. Yeah? Relocation from Nakuru to Nasila. That will be your first episode. And now, when you are analyzing that episode, you look at the reasons. That is the why. You are looking at the journey. That is answering the how. Yeah? And you are also looking at the traits of the characters as they move. How is the father behaving when the lorries are being parked and all that? So you are doing an episodic analysis. So when you do an episodic analysis, and again, literature thrives on conflicts, it is actually the creation of those conflicts. If it were not, why not for the retrenchment? Why not for the retrenchment of Ole Kaelo the father, from Agribix company in Nakuru, the family will not have relocated itself to Nasila. And that is actually the onset of a conflict, whoever has asked that. So literature and your two texts are very rich in that. Conflict after conflict. When they arrive in Nasila, it is the cultural conflict. Cultural conflict. These are two girls, Tayo and Resian, who have lived in the urban setting of Nakuru. They find themselves now in a cultural practice of the traditional Nasilian culture that demands a lot out of them. And part of it is to shed off their uncircumcised status, which is, in the local context, Intoye Nemengelana status. That is what now greets them with another conflict. And part of it that Henry Ole Kulet now grapples with is how are the girls going to survive? Day in, day out, both the mother, Mama Milanoi, and the girls, and by even extension, Ole Kaelo, are engrossed with one question. Are our girls going to be subjected to the cut? The old Murunya? The girls themselves are asking, especially Resian, is so engrossed with one question. Will I return to Nakuru and join Egerton University to pursue my academic journey in what? In veterinary medicine. So many conflicts, and these conflicts actually shape the play and the novel to the climax, and you are asking yourself, I know by the time we closed, when Corona came in, most of us, especially in Form 3, were almost at the climax of the conflict, and the novel and the play was really making a lot of sense. But again, the tragedy of Corona struck. We were forced to go home. So I'm sure, even at home, you actually found time on your own to do what? To look at the resolution. And the resolution, we only ask ourselves two questions. Is it tragic end or is it comic ending? How many minutes? Let me get to my director. My earpiece actually got off. Let me rush through the remaining questions very quickly. Hi, Mwalimu. I'm Damaris from Embu County, Kabuguri Secondary School. Please, who is the main character between Resian and Tayo? We can have as many main characters as we can. I say that the protagonist, and especially the simple question that will inform you to identify the main character, is asking yourself a key question. Will there be a story if this character is removed from the stage? If this character is eliminated, will there be a what? A story in this case. So in that case, I would say that Resian and Tayo are actually like Siamese twins. They are hooked to the hip, and you cannot. For instance, you cannot eliminate Resian from Tayo and say that there was a story. No. So the two are actually main characters in that particular text. Very well, that was Damaris. It is Viana from Thika. Please explain to me this. Olekaelo digs his own grave in Blossoms of the Savannah. Here again, you are going to look at the events in terms of now the build-up of the plot. What are some of the blunders? What are the mistakes that actually Olekaelo did that brought him down as a man? And from it, actually accepting to take a loan from the villain Oloisdori was part of the big blunder that he did. You know, financially, if you are, and I like saying this, that you can be so independent if you are a person of your own means. And that does not mean that you are so rich. Sometimes it's just a question of contentment. The little you have, you actually live within your means. But when Olekaelo was faced with the conflict of retrenchment, he had to look for financial survival. And part of it was actually to go to Oloisdori for some loan. I'm not saying as a teacher it's bad to take a loan, but also look at where you're getting a loan from. And you can see the very trouble that Oloisdori subjects our main character into, and the demands that he now comes with. He actually does not actually look at the repayment of the loan, but uses that as an opportunity, what we call an opportunistic character. Opportunistic. You are waiting for an opportunity to prevail, so that you strike. And he was a bad character in this case. So when he demands that he must marry Resian, and even from the very onset, in terms of his trait, he's being described as a Randy Higot. A Randy Higot. It tells you that there was a big problem that Olekaelo did by engaging this man and bringing him so close. He had actually been warned by Supeo, Ole Supeo, who was so friendly, a good friend to Olekaelo, had even forewarned him and said, my friend, be careful of that man. He has the appetite of Arandi Higot. And this is seen as the build-up of the plot comes. I don't want to go into the story because I know you know very well what he did to Resian, to the extent that Resian must now do what. So in not getting into the nitty-gritties of that, you will identify all other reasons, other actions that Olekaelo did. Like, for instance, also, according to my own thinking, the very hating of Resian. You cannot have two girls as a father and love one and hate the other. And you are openly showing to the other one that you don't like the sister. We know the reason why Tayo was loved by the father, and we know the very reason why Resian was, because Tayo was the firstborn. And when she came, she was expected to come. However, the expectation of the secondborn, who is now Resian, according to the father, he wanted a baby boy. Again, the question of gender and sex in terms of biology playing a very major role here. So Reshad is hated from the very onset. And you can see the way, in terms of the dialogue that ensues all along, is that she was really hated so much. So that was also another blunder or mistake that Olekailo does, and it really costs him a lot, because that's part of the reason as to why Reshan has to run away to look for refuge, obviously landing him in the hands of Olois Dori. Okay, as we come to the end, hi, this is Omar from Mombasa. How should I tackle male chauvinism in adult's house? So go to the, I was explaining the key concept, but now look at the themes. Chauvinism. Look at the questions as to why Nora was denied financial independence. Look at the reason why it is the male characters only who should occupy very good positions, such as manager of the bank. But women are playing very trivialized jobs, such as babysitting and all that. So if you look at all the positions, you are asking yourself a key question. Are women given equal opportunities? And the answer is no in adult's house. And the very last question here is, hello, I am Abudo Irene from Migori, St. Mary's Angongo. How is suspense entailed in the blossoms of the savannah? Suspense is a very good stylistic device, and it is important that as learners, you know that suspense helps to build the plot to the climax, and also creates in the dramatic suspense that keeps the reader glued or wishing to read on. So in adult, is it in adults, or yeah, in the blossoms suspense? Sometimes I don't agree with the common thinking that suspense must only happen at the end of the story or what. No, suspense happens all the time. So you'll be looking at episodes whereby you are asking yourself as a reader, what is going to happen next? You are what? As in the level of expectations is becoming so high. And for instance, all along when we start looking at that, for instance, when Olekailo goes to seek Olesupeyo's advice, and Mama Melanoi goes to seek advice from her fellow in Kaitos, we are looking, are they going to get solutions out of what they are going to seek? When Resia Tayo is captured by the men in Gito, we are asking ourselves, what has happened of Tayo? We are simply asking until we, because you see, when somebody is kidnapped, there's a lot of dramatic suspense. Is she safe? Is she dead? Is she alive? Will she come out of it? Up until we realize that she had actually been circumcised, and she's now reclaimed and rejoins the sister at Makere's sheep ranch. That is when we actually breathe a sigh of relief. But up until, it has been dramatic suspense. So do not look at the terminal suspense at the end of the play and you say, wow, that was, no. Suspense is upheld from the very initial conflict of writing, where the reader is kept on asking himself or herself what is going to happen next. So guys, we have been looking at the key features, the key concepts. We have looked at the areas that you need to really look at when you are analyzing the compulsory text. And you can see now from the nature of questions that are coming in, you realize that they are just now going back to the areas of literary analysis that we have looked at. So in a nutshell, I've talked about your culture, appreciate local culture and international culture. I've talked about values, ask yourself what is good, what is bad. Are the characters in my books manifesting that? Are they bringing forth values? Those who bring positive values, are they rewarded? Those who are for negative values, such as Oloisdori, are they punished or not? Look at the question of now the style. We have not exhausted. Maybe if we look at, we will get another session in the future. We will now look at the author's style and language in now building on the subject matter, the key concept, as well as now the related concept, which are the themes. Because language and style is very, very important. I cannot have adequate time to talk about language and style in this particular lesson, but I promise you, once we get more time, we'll come and talk about language and stylistics. So on that note, I gave you some assignments. I want you to submit it. I will look at it. Kindly tell us where you are watching from and which school you are tuned from, you come from. And as I finish my presentation or lesson, I want to wish you all the best. Pray for God's blessings and protection while at home. I know home is never a very good place for most of us who take school as not only as a point of enriching our academic potentials, but also even in terms of protection. It has been proven scientifically that students are much more protected in school than in home. And as a teacher, I always keep on posting that question to our parents. What role are you really doing? It saddens us as teachers to hear and learn that now cases of early pregnancies are very much on the increase. And we feel that as parents, you are doing a shoddy job. I'm one teacher who likes calling a spade, but not a garden tool. You as parents, you are not complementing. You are not synergizing our effort to make sure that these young ones actually are led in the correct direction. Finally, I wish all of you safety. Continue sanitizing. You can see I came with my mask here. So after the end of this lesson, I'm simply going to put it on. Sanitizers are all over. Keep on sanitizing. Don't take this coronavirus as a joke. It is existing, and you can see the casualties are very many. When I was in high school, my high school teacher used to tell me, please learn from other people's mistakes. Do not wait until it is your own case study. On that note, I wish you all the best, and we will see each other soon. Thank you very much. May God bless you.